You've tamed the voices in your head. You've put your courage to the test. Laid all your doubts to
Hi everyone, welcome from your Intuition Queen to a new episode of Intuitive Queens podcast. Today I have the pleasure to have with me Manuela Powell, who is a mindset coach. Hi Manuela, welcome.
Hi, Mara. Thanks for having me. I'm very excited to be here.
Thank you for being here. So you have a really super crazy story for me. Like when you talk to me about you being a doctor first and then being a happy doctor, like you were happy in your job, and then just decided that you wanted to change, I was completely hooked to your story. So I'd love for you to share it with all of us and my listener, because I know that your story is going to be really empowering for a lot of people.
Sure, I'd love to. Just as a disclaimer in the beginning, it was not like, oh, I decided and then I changed. It was a little more involved than that.
No, of course, of course.
But I actually wanted to tell you before the story of how I became a doctor because it has a lot to do with intuition. So I never thought of being a doctor before. There were no doctors in my family, and I really didn't know what I was going to do with my life. And then I was like, oh, I guess business school because it's kind of broad, because in Brazil we don't have college. So once you finish high school, you go to university, like medical school, lawyer, or you're going to be a lawyer. So when you're 16, you have to figure out what you're going to do for the rest of your life, which is insane. So I get into business school and I start the first month, I was like, this is so wrong. This is absolutely not what I'm supposed to be doing. And I started dreaming that I was a doctor, which had never, ever happened before. I never thought I wanted to be a veterinarian when I was a kid, but because I loved animals, I don't think it had much to do with
I had that thought
the
too.
medical part. Yeah. So it was like so weird because for the first few days, I was like, what? Why is this happening? And then it kept on happening. And I started thinking, I think I need to be a doctor. And the most amazing part for me now, knowing myself then, was the fact that I listened to it. Because after 2 weeks, I just left school. I dropped out of school without telling my parents first, which was insane. And then came home, called them. I was like, oh, so this happened. I dropped out and I'm going to go to medical school. And my parents were, what is happening right now? Because they were like, wait, but you don't know anything about being a doctor and you never talked about this. And by the way, you're not even a good student. Let's just remember that. I was like, no, but that's what I always loved biology. That was my favorite subject. And I just didn't like whatever it was, And so that was the first time that I don't even know how that happened, like why I really listened, but it was such a strong thing, like this is what I'm supposed to be doing, that I was even able to convince my parents, my mother, never having talked about this before. And eventually my father said, hey, you know what, I don't know, I was like 17, so I was like, hey, you're 17, if you get into whatever school until like 19, I'm happy. Kind of like, I'll support you until then, and then we'll see what happens. So amazingly enough, so of course I had dropped out. So that whole year I was studying because then I had to kind of catch up. And then I got into medical school. And then I realized that was really what I was supposed to be doing. I loved it. And I loved it for my whole career. So then after medical school, I did general surgery residency and then surgical oncology fellowship, and then became a cancer surgeon and started practicing. And I practiced for 5 years. And I moved to the US to do some training here. And so when was that? In 2013. Yeah, 2013 was the year that I was going to turn 40. And I was working 16-hour days. I woke up at 4:30. I worked until like 8 p.m. I had zero life. That was 6 days a week. So I really didn't have a life. And that was supposed to go on for 4 more years because I was redoing my training here in the US so that I could be board certified. So my mother in Brazil called me one day and say, hey, this is about December. She said, hey, I'm gonna come to New York because I think we have to talk. That was amazing. Yeah. I was like, no, I want to spend some time with you, etc. And then she came, and of course we talked for like 20 minutes because I was dead every day, right? And it was the cutest thing because she was never the mom to like make my food or anything, but like she would wake up at 4:30 to make my sandwich that I had for lunch, which was so awesome. And so she was like, no, what I was thinking was that you're going to be 40 this year. And then, so this is the end of 2012. And you mentioned once in your life that you wanted to have kids. So I just wanted to ask you to just think about it. Because
The
if you
mom
do
talk.
want to, just no pressure. Because she knows if she was pressured, I'd be like, no, I'm not doing it. But totally no pressure. But just I know that you're not thinking about things because you're just doing the next thing. Especially in medicine, is just so the next step is doing this training, or going to this hospital, or getting this job. So I just want you to stop and think about if that's what you want. If that's what you want, great, go for it. It's wonderful. And look at you doing great in Sloan Kettering and Cornell, like fabulous, So, but just think about it. You're going to be 45 when this whole thing ends. So just think about if you want to have biological children. That's, and I don't exactly remember how long it took me. I want to say 5 minutes for me to say, oh no, I don't want this at all. I'm so done with this right now. I cannot do this one more minute. And I'm definitely quitting. So I had a contract for 6 more months. And then I had decided to then become a single mother by choice, because of course I'm not going to, I'm going to have kids and then find someone to have kids immediately, obviously. So I go and see about being artificially inseminated. And I do everything. I go to the doctor, I do all the exams, all this stuff, and everything is going great. I buy all the goods that I have to buy, which is super weird. And anyway, as I'm ready, like totally ready for the next cycle to be inseminated, this is like maybe a month before the end of my time at the hospital in New York. I met someone who, by the way, lived in Alaska. And, I was like, what do I do now? And I'm kind of like, no, I'm not looking for a relationship. I'm going to be a single mother. This is great. But the guy was very much like, oh no, I would love to have kids. I'm like, oh man, come on.
Exactly what I want, like that.
I was like, come on, I'm so done with this. Like, I'm just ready for this, Anyway, we did get into a long distance relationship from New York to Alaska. I did go to Alaska twice, which I very much recommend. Everybody does.
I have a thing to go to Alaska. Like, I don't know. I saw a documentary once. I was like,
it's unreal. And I've been to many amazing places. It's unreal. So anyway, so I go to Alaska. And when I get there the second time, I noticed that thing's not going anywhere. But then my mind is already like, oh man, it'd be so much easier with a person. So I needed to kind of go back to that mindset of being a single mom. So I decided before I move back to Brazil and reopen my practice there and become a single mom, I decided I have still 6 months, right? I had just turned 40. So I'm like, I am going to go on a sabbatical for 6 months. Just chill after all this work. I'm just going to hang out. So I find this place in Hawaii. And again, the intuition was like, I saw it. I was like, where am I going to go? And I opened up my computer and this was the first thing I saw. And it was like, this is where I'm going to live now. And I moved there to be there for a month initially. The day I got there, I went straight to the office with my little bag and say, hey, can I extend my stay? Because I'm not leaving. And they're like, you just got here. You need to at least work for a few days. I'm like, okay, cool. After a week, I come back. I'm like, hey, 25% of my time is over. Can I now extend? Oh yeah, sure. So I ended up staying there for 8 months. And the reason I left was I met my husband there and we decided to leave. So then we moved back to Brazil, or he moved to Brazil with me, and we had kids. And thank God, because this would have been so hard. I really, really think that single parents are heroes. And then once I was pregnant we always knew that we were going to come back to the US. That was the plan. We just wanted, for him to experience Brazil, to learn Portuguese, for my kids to be born there, because of course it's way easier with help. Yeah. In Brazil, we can have way more support, including my mom. So when I got pregnant with my second kid, and by the way, he was born when I was 44, I started thinking about, okay, we decided we're going to move back here, and started thinking, what was it going to do? And of course the medicine thing, sure, I can't go back to medicine here in the US. I was practicing in Brazil, but I would have to jump through so many hoops, and I would have to work so hard. And it was just so much that eventually, of course, this was not an easy or quick decision, but eventually I decided that I would leave surgery. And then I started looking for other things. Okay, I'm going to do, and everything that I looked that was either non-surgery or non-clinical, I'll be like, my soul is dying. I can't. And after, again, months and months, I decided that you know, my soul is really not in this thing. Like, if I'm not going to do the thing that I love, which is cancer surgery, and that I'm good at and that I was trained very
Mm-hmm.
extensively to do, maybe I can look something completely different. And the Texas Medical Board actually helped me a little bit because they didn't accept my fellowship at Memorial Sloan Kettering, which is, by the way, the best cancer hospital in the planet, as something that was worth for them to give, you know, a foreigner a license. But thank God, I really thank them now, because again, the thing that I loved was cancer surgery, and I was not going to do that anymore. So I had a job lined up as to do wound care, which is, you know, flexible and would give me a lot of money to work 3 days a week. But I knew that was not the right thing. And that's the part, again, of like, when they offered me this job, I was like, sure, I'll do that for a little bit, you know, whatever. My kids are young. I just, you know, until I figured it out. So the Texas Medical Board kind of took that away and made me figure it out then, which was amazing. Not at the moment, obviously, but after a little bit, when I came to terms with it, then I spent many, many months. I didn't have a coach at the time, and I didn't know what any of this was. So I didn't know how I'm going to be fulfilled like I was before with medicine, until my husband very lovingly, not pushy at all, say, hey, how about you find yourself a coach? And I honestly, I always say this because I was so clueless that I had no idea. I was like, well, I don't play any sports. What are you talking about? What kind of coach? No, silly. Like a life coach, a career coach, you know, someone to help you figure out what you want to do with the rest of your life. I was like, oh, okay, let me look that up. And again, love at first sight. I looked at coaching because I thought, I was like, oh, I don't know, life coaching, that sounds woo. Is that even a thing? I'm going to look it up. And when I looked it up, I was like, whoa, how did I not know that this existed? Because it's, of course, a huge industry. And of course, it's totally legit. And there's charlatans just as there are surgeon charlatans, I mean, just as well, right? I was like, this is what I have to do with the rest of my life. I was born to do this. And he was like, wait, whoa. I told you to hire a coach, not be a coach. I was like, no, but that's definitely that's what I'm doing. And I did hire a coach just to appease him. So I had a couple of sessions.
I love this.
Yeah. I was like, I know that I'm not going to be able to get out of this. So I hired a coach, which was great. And I got to talk to her about coaching, but it was like, I know this. I know, like, I feel in my body that this is what I need to do. And when I had to find a coaching school, same thing. I saw my coaching school and the same thing. I researched some others after just to give him a spreadsheet and look. It's like, oh, look at all this research I did. But I was like, I know where I'm going. So it was, I think every single big decision in my life was very much guided by something that my body knew for sure. And the things that I knew, like, you know, that wound care job would have been, I would have hated it. I know that I would have hated it because that's a hard job to do. And people think cancer surgery, of course, is emotionally hard, but wound care, you go into nursing homes and people are not even, you know, a lot of people who are not even communicating. And I love talking to people and helping them in this way. And of course you help people with wound care, but I was like, no, but my thing is communicating and talking and helping them through this, which I did when I was a cancer surgeon, because of course people need to get used to their new normal.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
So, you know, I knew in my, and I would have accepted that job. If I would have gotten my license, I would have accepted a job, and maybe it would have taken me more years than it did to get to where I am. So I'm just so thankful that they did.
Oh, you know, sometimes at the moment, as you said, we don't think things are good for us, but then we look back, we're like, oh my God, thank you for, you know, rejecting me or for not making me go that way, because I found the other way. No, I agree. It happened to me so many times. You just in the moment, it doesn't look that nice, and you go through all your emotions, and then you're like, oh, actually, thankfully that happened, and now
I think it has to do very much with the fact that, well, first of all, women, we have been told not to trust ourselves since men realized that this is our superpower, that intuition is our superpower. I think that was in the Middle Ages that they started burning us at the stake, because they knew. It was like, well, if women are just allowed to do whatever they please, there's no way that we're going to be in power. Like, no, they're going to be like, get out of there, right? Because you're making decisions with your mind, and you should be making decisions with the whole of you.
The whole of you.
And I think this is still so ingrained at us that it's so easy for us not to trust ourselves and think, oh no, this is of course not true because someone else is saying, or even my mind. If when you make a decision, it's like, what is your mind saying? What's your body saying? And if they're saying different things, you need to listen to your body, because your brain will trick you.
Oh, thank you for saying this. I say this so many times, like, listen to your body.
Yeah. And it really I say this now as a coach, this is my mantra. It's like, don't believe everything you think.
Yeah, no,
because your subconscious job is to keep you alive. It's not for you to grow and thrive and be happy.
Exactly. Yeah, and to keep you safe. Absolutely. And and your body will communicate with you somehow. And I want to go back to your dream, because that is so fascinating. First of all, because I dream too, and I'm not going to tell the story, but I know how that is. Like, once you learn to listen, when I learned to listen, I'm like, oh, okay, right, so this means something. But it fascinates me that 2 weeks that you dream to be a doctor, and then you drop everything and you go for doctor school, and that is so fascinating. So I kind of want to talk a little bit more about what exactly were you dreaming, and how did you feel? You said that it was kind of easy for you to say, okay, I know this is what I need to do. But I'm really fascinated about the whole dream and how you felt and what was going on with you, if you remember.
I love that you asked that question. I never got asked that question. And as you're asking it, I'm like, oh, I never thought of it. That's so cool. So first of all, I am not a person who dreams. I very rarely remember my dreams. I'm now using these it's like a natural thingy to help you sleep, has a bunch of mushrooms and things like that, and that is actually making me dream more. Not mushrooms like crazy psychedelics, but I'm sure there's something about mushrooms,
natural things.
So it's been amazing. So this is very recent, like maybe 2-3 months ago. But before that, I was definitely not a person who remembered, because we always dream, right? But I would never remember my dream. It was very rare. So that was one thing. First of all, I was like, wait, I remember my dreams every single night for many nights, which was very unusual. And I don't remember exactly. I remember one vision of the dream, which is so silly because it was just one of those metal kind of movable little trays or things that you have inside an exam room. And now I know what it's called. It's called a Mayo Clip. It's like, I didn't know that.
With all the tools and things.
That was it. Yeah. That's the only visual thing that I have, from those dreams. But I do remember that when you asked, like, how did you feel? I don't think I ever thought this before, but like the answer immediately came to my mind. I felt like that's who I was. Like, I was a doctor. Right. So that was the only, I get goosebumps because I honestly this never was in my consciousness that was why. So thank you for asking that question. And it was really just feeling like, wow, this is just who I am. I just have to do it. I just, it was not even I have to do it. It's just like, this is just who I am. And now another thing that came to my mind was another couple of times that I dreamed. When I was pregnant, I used to remember my dreams and had insane dreams. And the one thing when we were choosing our oldest name, that was this name. Every time I dreamt, that was this name, which my husband actually had mentioned when we were in Brazil. It was like, oh, I just heard this name, it's Tiago. And it's like, oh, isn't it a cool name? Way before I was pregnant, nothing to do with it. I just met this guy with this name, which is like such a weird thing for him to comment on, but he commented on this. And then so when I got pregnant and we knew it was a boy, we're like, oh, it should be Tiago. It's like, oh, I don't know. So we were still on that phase. And every time I dreamt, it was like his name. That was his name. It was not that I wanted his name to be that. It was just like, so one day I tell Taylor, it's like, hey, so just so you know, whenever you're ready to accept the fact that his name is Tiago, let me know. But his name is Tiago, just like, so you know. That's how it's like, oh, okay, fine. It is. That was it.
Oh my God, I love it.
So there are these again, another complete, like, of course I love the name. If it was a name that I hated, I wouldn't have chosen it.
Yeah, of
But it
course,
was just like, it was a thing that was like, this is just how it is. I just know it. There's this truth, and I just happen to know it. That's all there is.
I absolutely love this. And you know what I really like is that when you said that when you dreamt about that, about being a doctor, that was who you are. So saying that, what came to me as a first thought is like, maybe you were a doctor in one of your past lives, if you believe in past lives. Because from the way you talk about it, it's such a, like, this is like so natural, like you knew, like, and you must have been something, because it's so clear for you. And I find it very, especially when you are so young, to act upon a dream. And yes, of course, what you were studying wasn't necessarily what you wanted, you realize that, but from dropping what you're studying because you don't think that's what you want to do, to go into medical school because you dream, it means that the whole of you was saying, yeah, this, like, we are telling you this is the way to go.
Yeah, and that is, to me, it's very weird too. Like when I look back at it, I can't believe I did that. That is insane. Like, it's like, wow, how did that even happen? I used to joke that was like, oh, I think when priests or nuns say, oh, I received the calling, I'm like, I totally received the calling. It's like, hey, this is what you're doing.
Absolutely.
And it does fascinate me too, that first of all, that happened at all, and that I actually listened, and that I convinced my parents, and that that the whole thing happened the way it happened, because it was definitely what should have happened. And I say this knowing that whatever happened in the past is what should have happened, because it happened. So of course, but it was just, it was amazing, because I could, of course, just as well have ignored it, especially so young, or especially listening to things like, oh, but hey, you can't do this because you're not a good student, which was true, by the way. I was not an A student by no stretch of the imagination. I was a student who, okay, I'll
do it,
take it through. And then in medical school, I was an amazing student, just because I was really excited and I wanted to learn that. I didn't want to memorize which war was which year with whatever, that did not excite me at all, the way that some things were taught at school. So I am fascinated by that too.
Oh, I am completely fascinated and hooked by this. I love.
And I have to say though,
story.
I did not tell my parents that I wanted to be a doctor because I dreamt about it, because I think they would commit me to a mental institution.
No, I get it.
I just said that I loved biology and that I always kind of thought of it, but I never said anything, which was total lie. I've never thought about it before.
Well,
like,
you
oh,
have
remember,
to
I
make
wanted
your
to
case,
be a vet.
right?
I was like, I wanted to be a vet. That's why, because I love medicine. And apparently, my grandfather, who was alive at the time, when I think my father used to talk to his mother every day, which was adorable. And then he must have mentioned something, because my grandfather was like, oh yeah, I have, I don't know, 30 or 40 cousins, like first cousins, because my father had 7 brothers. So it was like a million of us. And he said, oh yeah, she was the only one of my grandchildren that ever wanted to come see a cow give birth, because he was a farmer. And I was like, oh yeah, I do want to do that. And I would I would fish and like get a knife and like open the fish and see inside, but nothing of that came in my mind. I was always interested in science and this, but we figured this whole thing out after.
Yeah. But isn't that fascinating how you, and I think this is true for everybody, because like, even for me, I go back to what I used to like and what I used to be interested in when I was a child, and I'm like, of course I am doing what I'm doing right now. It all makes sense.
Right.
But I think that, like, even as children, you kind of have an idea of what you could possibly become, and you have your interest in it. It doesn't happen necessarily that you followed that. As you said, you went into business school because, of course, you need to have a good job and all that, we know.
Yeah.
But it is fascinating that if you look at children, if they follow that, they could potentially become already something that they know from very, very young
and
age.
sometimes people can't, because my parents, of course, I think they would always have loved the fact, if I said I was going to be a doctor when I was 5, they would have made me study, and they would tell all their friends, because of course, usually parents love that their kids say, oh, this is what I'm going to do. But I think sometimes we have these truths about ourselves that not only people don't notice, because those things, me being interested in opening fishes and doing all that kind of stuff, that has always happened, and no one had connected this to anything. Oh, maybe you're going to be some sort of scientist.
Yeah.
My father always said, oh, you should do something visual, I think, like something creative, because you're so creative. My mother's like, no, you need a real job, you know, those kind of things. But interesting to me is also that we have these truths inside that a lot of times we don't know. And that's why every single successful person in history says that they have done, or they do constantly, regularly, some sort of meditation practice, quiet time, whatever, contemplation, whatever you want to call it. But meaning people spend time with their minds and their bodies, and that's why I believe good part of their success is due to, because they are able to really connect to that thing that we all have that we all live in. I don't know what it is. Some people might call it God, universe, source, whatever. I am super scientific, so I just know that there's something that we cannot see but that exists, and that connects all of us and us to the universal consciousness. And that thing knows, and we all have access to this, but we've forgotten how to decipher that language. And the only way to go back to that is to really get to know yourself and your body, and listen to, oh, this is what my body is saying now. It says no to this and yes to that thing that makes no sense at all, but that's what I should be doing. And that goes against the societal norms and whatever, you know. So we have so much of the cultural, like, blocking us to listen to that, that I think we're now at the age of starting this awakening, that people are, of course, listening way more to that, and actually giving value to that, and say, oh, you think that? Sure. Like, with my kids, I don't care if you live in my house for the rest of your life, as long as you're fulfilled and you're doing something good for the world, I'm fine with it. I'm not going to say, hey, you need to go to college and you need to get an actual job, blah, 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 because I know that's all BS. Like, what is an actual job? Some people might think that my job is not an actual job.
Exactly.
Here I am.
Yeah, my mom doesn't
people.
even understand what I do. What is it that you do? I'm like, help women, mom. It's all right. Don't worry. Like,
so it's fine.
difficult for them to understand what is it that I do, because it's not in their conscience. Like, so sometimes when I don't want to explain myself to people, like, I'm a sort of psychologist, but I'm not a psychologist. And and they're like, okay. And then the conversation ends, and I won't waste my time explaining what I do, because I know they're not interested. They just want to understand.
An easy one that I discover now, because especially, can you imagine a person who was a surgeon is now a life coach, is like, oh, Jesus, what are you doing? Did you lose your license? Did you mess up? What did you do? One explanation that one of my mentor coaches use and to explain is, I help people make decisions. I was like, oh, this is great, because that's understandable. And it's kind of easy. Like, it's like, okay, I just help you find out the answers to your issues inside of yourself. That's all.
It's so true. But I guess, and this is actually a very good point. Like, your transition from being a surgeon, and therefore in society terms being happier because you have studied medical school, you are actually doing something that it's recognized by the whole world, that you're helping so many people with a big problem.
People put that, like, it's validating.
Exactly.
Everybody thinks it's like, oh, this is you must be a good person, you must be smart, you must be, you're whatever, right? So they place all those labels on you, and you could be a horrible person, a horrible doctor, because those of course exist.
Exactly.
And still like, oh, but you're you're exactly.
And so how was your transition for you from that? Because I know that for you personally, you knew, but how was for you to even just talk to people and say, I'm no longer a surgeon, but now I'm a life coach, and this is what I do?
In the beginning, when I started life coaching school, I didn't really right away say, because I kind of like, okay, I got out of medicine, and this was when my second child was born. And when he was 2 months old, we moved to the US. which was super fun. Moving with a newborn and a 2-year-old was very exciting. I seriously do not wish that upon anyone. And moving to a house that we had just seen on FaceTime, and that things really didn't work because the dishwasher broke, the washing machine broke, the car battery went. It was just a disaster. But so because that happened, because that was that transition, it was kind of like, oh, I'm kind of in maternity leave. And that in my mind, it was like, it's fine that nobody knows what's going on. Because at that time, I was still very worried about what people were thinking. Because right now, I really don't care. That's none of my business. But at that time, I still had some of that. And I started school, I think, when he was a little over a year, I think. Yeah. So for about 6 months, I didn't say anything. And then eventually I was like, I have to just tell this truth to people because first of all, I need people to know so that I can have clients.
Mm-hmm.
So, but I think at that point, because I was already maybe like 6 to 8 months, very much just living and breathing this whole personal development thing, I was like, this is the answer to all the problems in the world. This is amazing. I was just so bought in with the value that was and how life-changing that was, because I could see that in my own life by having coaches, because you get coached extensively during coaching school, at least on mine. And so I think by that point, I was like, I don't even care if people say, oh my gosh, that's absurd. I'm like, I honestly, if you think it's total BS and doesn't do anything, that's fine. Don't do it. You don't know what you're missing. It can change your life. Like 1 hour with a life coach can change your life, because I saw that happening, not only with myself, but with my clients. So I think that was why, to me, it isn't a problem. It was just, and especially when I would go back home and I would have some conversations with some doctor friends and be like, oh my gosh, are you kidding? And just the last time I went to Brazil, which was Christmas, so 7 months ago, I got offered a job in Brazil. It's like, oh, can you come 1 week a month and then do this and that? And I was like, I was very flattered, but like, that was such an easy no. I didn't even have to consult my body. I was just like, as they were saying, it was like, oh no, absolutely not. That's 100% no. Even if it was here in Austin, I would have said no, because that's not what I do anymore. I can't just be a doctor for a week out of the month. And first of all, I don't want to not be a coach for a week out of the month. And second of all, I don't want to have to study medicine anymore, because that's not where my interest is. My interest is studying all the other things that are relevant to what I'm doing now. So that was so easy. So I think, that's a really good question, because I think some people might suffer from that a little bit when changing any career to any other career. And I feel like that's, if you're really sold on what you're doing and you feel that this is just the right thing, you can think whatever you want. That's fine.
And it's proof that you said, I didn't want to stay 1 week without coaching. So that clearly says that this is what you're supposed to do right now. It wasn't before, and you were doing something different, but now it gives you that power to be able to say, no, I'm sorry, even if the best hospital, something that maybe you wanted when you were a doctor, but it's no longer something you want now. And it's like that alignment that you're doing something that makes you happy, and it's the right thing, and you're helping other people in a different way.
No, for sure. And I still get a lot of emails, even though my profile on LinkedIn doesn't say I'm a surgeon anymore, my everything, but I still get at least one email or text message a week telling me about some surgery job. Do I want to apply? Because I think having had doing my fellowship at Sloan Kettering and then Cornell, it's just like I think they kind of maybe look at whomever graduated from there or whatever, because I was just like, no, where do you find the idea? Didn't you look at my LinkedIn profile?
That happens to me too. And sometimes I'm like, did you not see? I know. Okay, so now let's talk about what you do and what kind of women do you help. So you're a mindset coach, and you help women. How does that work for you?
What I do is I help women who feel like they have erased part of themselves after they had kids, or really having a hard time reconnecting the person that they were with the mom identity.
Right.
and I was a mother really late. So I was a fully grown adult, right? I was 42 when I had my first and 44 when I had my second. So I thought, I was like, well, I know who I am. And, I'm just, and no, I felt like I had no clue at some point. I was like, what do I even want? Who am I? Like, I really had a hard time. And then I started noticing that that was just me. I started thinking about all my patients, because I basically did breast cancer for most of my career. So I always worked with women.
Mm-hmm.
And I just thinking back of so many conversations as to remember that this was a real problem, that finding your new identity, one that can get all these, reconcile the person you were with the person that you now are, which is different, obviously,
Yeah.
with your full authentic self. So that's basically my niche in coaching, and I do that in several ways. I have one-on-one coaching. I have a Facebook group that I just opened that I'm loving, and doing life coaching and all that stuff. It's been really fun. But I think it's, the more I do it, the more I hear women coming to me and say, oh my gosh, yes, I totally feel like that. So working on boundaries, on stopping people pleasing, on really finding out what you want. Because a lot of times I have this experience. My husband asked me once to write what I wanted for the next 5 years. And I could not do it for the life of me. Like that, I just didn't know. I'm like, I just want to survive today. I don't know. I want my kids to be alive, and I want to be not completely insane by the end of this day. That's all I want.
Yeah.
So just having that back and reconnecting to that person who you are, and finding your version of motherhood, because you can never, you're not going to please everyone. There's always someone.
No, exactly.
If you do cloth diapers, someone's going to say you're hippie. If you do disposable diapers, people are going to say you're killing the planet. If you send now your kids to school with COVID, you're risking your child's life. If you're keeping them home, you're preventing them from having social experience. I don't know. It's just, you cannot win. So
exactly.
You need to find out what is your version, what is a good mom in your mind, and absolutely nobody else's. And really stop living for your kids only. Because if we do that, what happens is you live for your kids, and then your kids grow up, and then they have kids, and then they live for their kids, and then so on and so forth. And then it's just a bunch of people just living to put more people in the planet, and not really ever doing what they're supposed to be doing.
Yeah.
Instead, you're living what you're supposed to be living, even if it goes completely against what society thinks.
Yeah.
Then your kids can say, oh, okay, so I don't necessarily have to follow all these rules that make no sense at all, because there are lots of rules that make absolutely no sense, that you should not follow. Absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely.
If they don't make sense to you.
Yeah, and I love what you say. Like, also, I think kids grow up and they leave home, and then the mothers and the fathers don't know what to do.
Exactly. Oh my gosh, they don't even know how to talk to each other.
Exactly. And then there is this void, even if they're young enough to be able to have a different kind of life, travel, or whatever it is that you might be doing when you have that freedom. So it's not, I'm thinking about my parents as well. Once we left, my mom was like, it's me and your dad. I'm like, yeah, okay, you guys go get some friends.
Yeah. Get a life.
My mom was like, what? Like, how do you do that? No, we're too old.
Yeah, because first of all, there's no too old. There's only you're dead.
Exactly.
That's it. That's when you stop being able to do things. But also, just this era now that we're living with this pandemic, I think it really has put all of these things in front of us. Like, what is exactly that you want to do with your life, and are you living the life that you want? Because for those of us who are at home with our partners, a lot of time, so many people are getting divorced because you always working, you're always thinking about the kids and going, that whole thing, the same thing that I talked
you're
about
not even used to spend that much time together.
And the people who are alone, they never spend this alone time with their thoughts. So it's really hard, because then you notice, I don't know if I like the person that I'm being right now. And then because it's so hard to envision who and how can you get to this new person, I think it's sometimes can drive people crazy and get, right now in quarantine, being like, how am I even going to do that? And I think that's one reason that the coaching profession has grown so much, because people who do realize that a coach can really help you do this way faster.
Yeah.
just like change your mind
And it's
and
also the
really
perfect
figure
time
out.
because of
Perfect.
the time that people
Yeah.
have more. Yeah, absolutely. So I kind of want to talk a little bit about your kind of clients and what is the struggle, the biggest struggle that they have. Yes, of course, we talked about them not knowing who they are anymore, and creating boundaries, healthy boundaries, so then they can find themselves again. But what do you feel whenever they come to you is the thing that is really, really hard for them to learn, to get over?
Yeah, I think there's several things. One thing that most people say, oh, I never have time for myself. I'm always doing everything for everybody else. And I'm going to very, very lovingly call that BS, because I get it. I do have kids and they're little. One is not even 3 and the other is 5. And I do have a job and I do have a house and I do have all these things. And of course you can have way more kids than that and be more work. But the thing is, I know that what we do as women is we serve, and we have a hard time asking for help, and we have a hard time accepting help when people offer the help. And we a lot of times see that we have to do certain things that we absolutely haven't. Like literally 2 days ago, I saw this post on a Facebook group that I'm at, that this lady is saying, oh my gosh, please tell me it's okay that my house is a mess. I'm a single mom of 3 and I've been working all day and blah, blah. I was like, how can you even think about this? How can you even waste your precious energy thinking about this? Yeah. So I think we hold ourselves to a standard that is completely impossible. So if we just lower that damn standards, I was a neat freak before I got married and had kids. My house, if you went in my apartment, you would think that I was selling the place because it was immaculate. It was beautiful. And then first of all, I got married to a person who's not immaculate and beautiful. And then I was like, and then I had kids. I'm like, okay, that's fine. That's,
that's over.
And then I know, I see myself, I work from home. So of course now everybody works from home, but I used to do that before. And sometimes my kids are in daycare, my husband is at the office back in the day. And if I would get out from my office and go to the kitchen and I would see, oh, there are dishes here, I would start doing the dishes. Oh, there's laundry in it. And then I would miss like 3 hours of work because I'm getting the house clean. And I was like, how am I not getting everything done in my business? Well, because my business is going the end of the line here, right? So, or the priority list.
Yeah.
So what I started doing, okay, I don't do any sort of chores during my work day because my husband's not doing dishes when he's at work, right? And so I do these things once everybody's home, it's family time, and my kids will help me do one thing or the other, whatever. So I think once you really lower your standards, so like you don't need to have everything absolutely perfect. I don't care what people are going to think. Yeah. I really don't. And if your mother or your neighbor or your friend who comes over or whomever are going to think you're a slob, it's none of the damn business. Exactly. Who cares? People are going to think things anyway. If you're perfect, they're going to think, oh my gosh, she's such a something is wrong there, of course. Yeah. Right? So you can never please people. If once you learn that truth and like, hey, just live your life. No, don't be an asshole, obviously. Be nice, be kind, be as I'm the kindest person I can be. But just like my kids are not super cute, matchy. They're just, they have like, this morning I look at their clothes. I'm like, oh my gosh, you look like homeless people. What is this? Because they're boys and the clothes have to be washed a bajillion times. I'm not buying clothes. I'll buy when you outgrow this thing. Why am I going to, spend money and put clothes in the landfill and all that stuff? I don't want to do that. So I think when you think about all of these things, you find the time. And actually having a challenge that started yesterday in my group about exactly that, how to find the time and then using that time to know yourself, to know what you want, because then that's the second part. Sure, you lower your standards and now you have the time. What are you going to do with your time? Because that happens sometimes.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, there's so many. Do I read a book? Do I go take a bubble bath? Do I go see friends? And then you end up cleaning the house because you don't know what
exactly
to do.
Yeah.
So like,
there's that thing to do that you haven't done. Yeah.
So once you start taking that time and finding really what you are, who you are, what do you want to do with your life, you're going to see that there's a lot of other things that you're doing that you don't need to be doing. And then you're going to find even more time. So I think that's the main big, umbrella thing that we as women go through is just really just stop giving so much when your cup is completely empty.
Yeah.
Just try to find that for yourself first, so that you show your kids, hey, this is not, you don't have to sacrifice. And of course you do have to sacrifice. When you have a newborn, you're not going to sleep all the time, of
No,
course not,
yeah,
right? So there are some things that of course you're going to do, obviously,
but
but
not
there's
all the
so
time.
many things
Yeah.
that you don't, and you don't have to be the only person to get up in the middle of the night. So there are so many things that we just take for granted, that it's our job because it has been our job for 400 years, so that's us, what we do now.
Yeah,
And it's not true.
I
And
agree.
it's our fault a lot of times. So I think recognizing that responsibility gives you so much power, and really gives the power to change, because a lot of times your partner is just there. Yeah, I've been offering. I know my husband was, at some point is like, well, okay, fine, I'm gonna go hang out and do my thing while you clean the house and don't want any of my help.
Yeah, and it's going back to what you were saying earlier of us women not wanting to do it all, and not wanting to get help, and not being able to accept help from other people. So
because you want to be needed. You
yeah,
want people to.
yeah,
And you want to keep the control. Like, for instance, I think my husband has a way of loading the dishwasher that really makes no sense. My mind is just like, what are you trying to do this, like, in a very weird way, because it's very, but I'm never going to say anything. I don't care. Are you putting the things in the dishwasher? Are they clean at the end? That's fine.
exactly.
Fine. End of story.
Yeah.
I don't have to do it my way or at the time that I think is appropriate. You have to let go of these things. And if I can, people can, because I used to be control freak, insane. I lived by myself for a decade at least, if not more. So you really have that all. This is the way I do things. I'm like, well, why?
Yeah, there's no
Maybe
one
just
telling
change.
you anything otherwise. So of course, yeah, absolutely, and it's so true. That, and I think also you want to control others, so then you don't really need to look at yourself and all your insecurity and all the things that trigger you.
You do get sympathy, because like, oh my gosh, people love saying they're busy, right? It's just such a thing. Oh, I'm so busy. I didn't have time to do this. Oh, I have time to do nothing. My life is so blah, blah. And then other people who think the same way goes, oh my gosh, poor you. You're so blah, blah, blah. So when you start doing this work with me, you very likely will lose the Martyr of the Year award that you always have. But it's for a good cause, because you don't want to be a martyr. And I know a lot of us, and I was like that too, a lot of us want to be in that role. But once you get out of it, it's just so much better not being a martyr, and just saying to people like no, and just saying no to things. And not giving an explanation. There's no oh no, because but no, it's just no.
No, it's an answer.
Thank you, but
in
no.
itself. Yeah, exactly.
It.
Yeah. So okay, so then if we want to work with you, where we can find you?
You can find me on my website, manuelapowell.com. And on my social medias there, I hang out, as I said, on Facebook. I have a Facebook group called Audacious Motherhood Society. And it's been really fun. I think you should all join me there. And today, actually, I have the first episode of my podcast being recorded in the group. It's always going to be recorded live. So that's a plus if you're there, just telling stories about all the audacious mamas that came before us, that to inspire us that we can be very different than what our moms taught us, because that's what they knew back in the day. So.
Exactly. Yeah, absolutely. Okay. Oh my God, I so love talking to you, Manuela.
Fun.
Before we wrap up, what is one thing that you feel like saying to the women watching and listening, like an advice?
Don't waste any more time. If you're not satisfied with your life, when you lie down in bed, because that's the only time that you actually are with your thoughts. When you lie down in bed and you're like, oh, I should be grateful because I have X and Y and Z. Don't think that. Just something is wrong if you're thinking that. Don't think you can't be unhappy or not satisfied with the life that people think is perfect. What people think doesn't matter. You have to decide. If you don't think your life is the best, the most amazing thing you could be living right now, you don't want to get to your deathbed and I should have, so I think There's always time. I don't care if you're 30 or if you're 75 or whatever, there's always time to do something different. So just go ahead and find help, if it's with a coach, with a therapist, with whatever it is, but just really try to get out of that and really find out who you are and what you want.
Oh, I love this. Oh my God. Manuela, I
This was
absolutely
really
loved.
fun.
I absolutely love this episode. Thank you so much for being on my podcast today. It's been such a beautiful, beautiful conversation.
Thank you. Yeah, I loved it too. Thank you for making me think of things that I had never thought before. That was super
My
cool.
pleasure. My pleasure. I just, well, my question just come as you talk, so I don't even plan.
No, your
They just
intuition
come
said she
naturally.
needs to know this about herself. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you super, super much. Oh my God, I so love talking to you, Manuela. It's such a powerful story. I love the dream factor and everything that she does. So if you are a new mom, or you're a mom and you're struggling to find yourself, please get in touch with her. She's definitely the right person. She definitely has a lot to help you with. And you can definitely check her out. Everything is in the show notes, so you can find all her details there. And I hope you love this episode as much as I did, and I hope you love this podcast. So if you like it, please subscribe to either iTunes or to YouTube if you're watching. And thank you so much. I am really grateful because you're growing so much and so fast, and I am so deeply grateful for you. If you want to get in touch with me, if you want to know more about me, work with me, just go to theintuitionqueen.com and you can find my story, what I do, and all my offers. I have one-off sessions with color therapy and intuitive sessions and oracle card reading, or a 4-month program where we'll do all of that, and I'll help you find your purpose and getting in touch with your intuition, learn to trust it, and manifest your vision, whatever your vision is. So if you want to ask me questions, just go through that website, or you can get in touch with me on Instagram, The Intuition Queen. That's where I'm most active, and I always respond to all the comments and all the questions that I get. And well, yeah, I hope you enjoyed this episode, and I'll see you next week.
Your heart is full and
Ciao.
wanting more. Your future's at the door.